Hi, everybody. I'm Betsy from Agility with Sound. This series of talks is about what the research and evidence is telling us about literacy education, most especially as it applies to older students who have fallen behind or are at risk of stalling. The aim should be to have as many students as possible on the route to NCA Level 2. The vast majority of students have the innate intelligence to succeed. Now, in a classroom of older students, there are likely to be three groups with very different needs. Students who are highly efficient readers and writers who are self-teaching in the process of reading. Now, by self-teaching, I mean they can look at a new word and figure out its pronunciation and possible or probable meaning at a glance. They notice the word's makeup and how its spelling corresponds to its pronunciation in order to remember it for next time. This is really important. The English language is huge, and to be considered literate as an adult, the student needs to learn how to decode, spell, and understand something like 30,000 words at a minimum. Kids go to school for 200 days a year for 13 years. That's 2,600 school days in total, assuming they are never sick. 30,000 words in 2,600 days is a great many new words a day. And this can only be picked up in the process of reading. You, as teachers, assuming you read for pleasure, have most probably picked up double or triple that number simply by reading. That, unfortunately, is a small number of students. We have a large number in this next group, students who are in the compensating, inefficient group, students who seem to decode at a more or less satisfactory level, but typically have issues with spelling and comprehension and with decoding new vocabulary, especially unfamiliar vocabulary. And more often than not, that's quite a large group. Then, of course, we have students whose achievement is well below anticipated levels, and the needs of each group are very different. So why does this happen? Students struggling to spell are not storing the words properly or completely in memory. Students cannot focus on comprehension if much, or maybe even all, of their attention is diverted to figuring out words. When I hear of students who seem to decode adequately, but their spelling and comprehension are both compromised, I look first at how they decode words. So why does this happen? Well, these students have not developed the essential skills known to underlie competent decoding and spelling, and have developed inappropriate, compensating, inefficient decoding strategies to get by. By the time they're at intermediate, secondary school, these strategies are entrenched and instinctive. And those compensating strategies work with basic reading material and basic vocabulary, the sort of stuff they're likely to get as a 7 or 8-year-old. The issue may not be obvious for some years, and many of them thought they were really good readers. And then they hit a ceiling as they get older. And this may be when the struggle is first evident to the teachers and first evident to the student. And it can be absolutely devastating for the student, because most of the students believe that they are now struggling because they are stupid. That needs to be dealt with in the beginning. And for many students, possibly most of them, their primary goal in school is to hide their struggle, all their perceived inadequacies, and they may quite quickly become highly skilled at this. So making a difference involves both building appropriate skills and overriding inappropriate strategies in equal measures. For most students, this can be done. The secret is intensive targeted, appropriate skill building, building the skills of decoding and spelling, and comprehension and writing all at once. Now, this video from Stanislas Dehaene, who is a French neuroscientist specializing in learning both literacy and maths. This video sums up what competent reading looks like. If you don't have time to see the lot, this little bit here, this 25, 30-second little snippet here, sums up what competent reading looks like. Now, this is what you will have seen, something like this. This is a screenshot from that video. This is the brain. This is the eye here, the back of the brain here, ear in here somewhere. This is the left-hand side of the brain where speech and language is stored. When I hear a word in speech, my eardrum picks up a sequence of sound waves that my brain interprets as pronunciation with a meaning. And that all happens right here. When a competent reader sees a word, and note that word competent, these same regions are activated, the same pathways are accessed. I hear teacher here, but I see it over here. One through my ear, the other through my eye. But in both cases, it lands in exactly the same part of the brain. Learning to read and spell is above all learning how to access this existing network where all words are remembered, how they are pronounced, and what they mean. It is about matching visually presented words, print in other words, with a signal that comes through the eye, to this existing network of pronunciation and meaning that has come through the ear and has been developed through listening. Building language knowledge, this complex network through speech, is inbuilt and natural. The link to print, this link here, is not, and relies on a set of skills that develops over time. This is another video, a much longer video that goes into it in much more detail. And this is a screenshot from that video. So what is happening here is that here's the image coming through here to this visual area of the brain, to this little part here that has now become specialized for recognizing the shapes of letters. Originally, that was specialized in, newborn babies for recognizing faces. It's been hijacked for reading, and recognizing faces has gone somewhere else. Up here somewhere is where the sounds those letters make are stored. I see a B here, and I hear B up here. I see CH here, and I hear ch or k as in school, or sh as in machine up here. This is the essential letter sound link, the phonics. But as you can see, that is far from enough. The sequence of letter sounds, all of them must get linked to the pronunciation and meaning bonds over here. But even that is not enough. To remember that word instantly, to read and spell, a much more direct link here must be made. This happens when the reader stops to notice that this word I have just figured out, let's say it's teacher, is made up of t, here hearing teacher, and here I'm seeing t, e, ch, This is what orthographic mapping is about, how words are remembered, mapping the pronunciation that I've figured out here to this letter sequence here and making that link directly. A competent reader need only go through this process once or twice, maybe 3 or 4 times for a tricky word to have its pronunciation and spelling locked in forever, both to read and spell this way to read it, this way to spell it. The reader need only see this letter sequence here to hear the pronunciation of the word in their head, and of course link it to the meaning. They need only hear the pronunciation in their head for the letter sequence to just fall on the page with no conscious effort. The big difference, of course, is that individual sounds in spoken words, the words we hear, are melded together as a single shape of sound, whereas the sounds and words on the page are discrete. So when I hear from, I just hear from, but when I see it, I see f, r, o, m. I hear teacher, but I see t, e, ch, er. To make the match, 2 key skills must develop. The first one is to listen to spoken words and detect the individual sounds, to hear from and detect f, r, o, m. The second one is how to see words on the page and blend those sounds back into the spoken form, to see f, r, o, m, and turn it into from. These 2 skills must develop for this language system here to be accessed. It is more complicated than that. Rapid identification of unfamiliar words, especially longer words and unfamiliar vocabulary, in the process of reading means recognizing the internal structure of words, including the stress patterns, and learning to recognize those in speech as well as in print. And that will be covered in the next video. Unfortunately, that is not what is happening for most of our kids. So the kids that go through that process and link what they see to the speech and language area of the brain, everything's happening on this left-hand side speech and language area of the brain. But we've got a vast number of students for that. It's not working. They're remembering words visually on the right-hand side of the brain, not accessing that speech and language system that is existing in the left-hand side of their brain. And this is what visual thinking looks like. Kids are noticing the beginnings of words. They're noticing the overall length of the word and the overall shape of the word. They're also noticing distinctive bits, like this G at the end of this word, this SH, this taller T here. And you can go a long way reading like that. This one can really only be shout or shoot. Shirt and short are a bit skinnier here. This can only be mouth or month. This can only be crashed or crushed. This can only be people or purple. And kids can get really good at reading like that. They can sound really fluent. But spelling, if this is what I know about purple, what do I do? P, how do I do ER, P, how am I going to do all? OL, IL, doesn't look right. I think I'll put an E on the end because words always look better with an E on the end. You will notice that this A that students are processing, they're not noticing these ones in the middle of the word. They're noticing it at the beginning of the word, round, mung, afraid, and so on. And most particularly this one, cat. A making the sound has got locked in their head. And how many students do you know that routinely use A to make the sound? And the other thing, if this is a word that you don't know, it's not in your head, How are you going to figure it out from that sort of information? I've seen kids that can figure out that in an instant. They know, they've seen it before, they've worked it out, they know it's precious. But come to spell it, Presh, that doesn't look right. I kind of give up at that point. A lot of kids are reading like that, and they can get away with it while they're dealing with words that are familiar, words that are not too big, words that are already in their oral vocabulary, but it all breaks down as they get older. So it's like this. 8-year-olds in a swimming pool, they're both going to get to the end. They're both swimmers. They're both, neither of them are going to drown. It's working. But as they get older and they get out into the ocean and get caught in a rip, one is going to succeed and the other isn't. It's the same thing with literacy. A student can get by with visually thinking about words as an 8-year-old, a 9-year-old, but sooner or later it's going to start breaking down. And we're seeing a lot of our kids who are just going about it the wrong way. So of course phonics matters. Of course it does, but it is not enough. The code is really complicated, with multiple ways to spell most sounds. Which one do I use here if I'm writing teacher? EE, the same as speed, or EA, the same as reach, or EI, the same as protein, or IE, like thief, or this one, like funny, or this one, like funny, fun-ier, or this one, like recipe. Linking spelling pattern to pronunciation for all words, every sound, every letter, orthographic mapping is absolutely essential. So English is an alphabetic language, meaning it is based on an alphabet that represents the sounds of speech. The reading brain is one that can interpret visually presented text as a voice, words in print as pronunciation, letters and sounds. This link is not automatic. It is not necessarily instinctive, and for many students, it is difficult. It relies on a set of core phonological skills. So the vast majority of struggling kids, students who struggle with decoding or spelling or developing vocabulary or comprehension or writing, or with all of these, have a core phonological deficit. They may have other issues going on as well, but the core phonological deficit seems to be there for all of them. The solution is to build these phonological skills so that the students develop the thinking and memory skills of competent students, the ones I've just described. And this involves masses of practice. At the same time, those inappropriate visual ways of thinking need to be overridden. More and more phonics will not address that. So this is the first of the skills, how to detect and correctly identify all the sounds, the phonemes and spoken words instantly and automatically. And it's not all that easy. It's not instinctive. If I say from really slowly, you will hear that those sounds just meld into each other like this. There is no clear dividing line between f and r. F just gradually changes into a r. There is no clear dividing line between r and r. They just glide into each other. And at the same time, you've got to correctly identify those sounds, getting the difference between p and b, p, b, which are very close in natural speech. The difference between, as in this word, f and v and th, very close in natural speech. K and g, t and d, sh and ch, I and e. Becoming sensitive to those. And then matching those phonemes to graphemes, phonemes being the unit in speech and graphemes being the unit in print, and the sequence of graphemes to the pronunciation. So can is k, a, n, teacher is t, e, ch, and there's the t, there's the e, there's the ch, there's the and said is s, e, d. Might not be the usual way of spelling e. It is in this word. Making that direct match between the pronunciation and the spelling pattern of the word goes for all of those what get called exception words in the same way. And then, of course, blending, which we'll talk about in the next video. So to sum up, just as there is a direct link between the language coming in from the ear to the speech and pronunciation and meaning network of the brain, a direct link must be established with the signal coming from the eye. Sadly, this is not happening for most of our students. So we've got these efficient and inefficient readers. The efficient readers remember words according to their pronunciation, making that direct link between what they see and what they hear. Recognizing that words have a predictable structure can only happen if that is in place, and that's what the next video will be talking about. They listen to words to spell, and it's an unconscious process. They hear text directly. All mental resources can therefore be dedicated to content, to comprehension. But we've got all these other kids who remember words primarily according to their visual features, some letters, but shape and length and so on as well. For these kids, that structure of words is elusive. They finish up sounding out words to spell, which is a conscious process. It makes many of them phonetic spellers, and it also means that their focus when they're writing must be on just transcribing words rather than what the sentence is about and where I'm going here. And they must translate visually remembered words into a pronunciation using mental resources to do so, which interrupts their comprehension.